Hey, we're Kenny and Elle, the founders of Stuff You Can Use and Grow Curriculum, and we are excited today to talk to you about training volunteers.
Yes, and friends, we are guessing you probably got into youth ministry because you care about teenagers, which makes sense. That's why we got into youth ministry too. But if you've been doing this for longer than, 5 minutes, then you've probably realized that you cannot actually pastor and disciple every single teenager that you encounter. And because of that, we need other people who are kind of on our team, who are aligned with us, who can help us multiply our influence and our ministry to reach more teenagers. So that's what we want to talk about today. In our context, we're mostly working in a local church. And so for us, we've learned a lot about how to lead and empower volunteers well. You might be a volunteer yourself, which is awesome. But no matter what your role is, no matter what your ministry looks like, chances are you need to figure out how to empower and encourage other volunteers to minister alongside of you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we haven't always done this well.
Yes. Well, when you get into youth ministry, it's probably because you love kids, you love students, you love teenagers. Those are the people that you want to connect with and minister to. And sometimes we're not equipped or we don't know how to actually train and support and celebrate the volunteers that we have. And so when I started off as a youth pastor, that was a situation I found myself in. There was one point on a Sunday morning where I had 80 middle school boys show up to our program.
Which sounds cool.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Oh my gosh, 80 middle school boys. We're doing a great job. But we only had 2 adult volunteers. And so that's when I knew
that's terrifying.
They could mutiny at any moment. They could take over the service. Yeah, our lives are in danger. And so that's when we realized, okay, we need a system and a strategy to train and equip and celebrate and honor the volunteers that we have and the volunteers that we want to come. Yeah. So we need to be able to not only sustain the volunteers that we have, but recruit more and create an environment where they love to serve. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do today.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to give you 7 things that will help you train your volunteers.
Yes. And no matter what your context looks like, you can use these 7 principles, these 7 strategies in order to invest in other adults who are serving alongside of you. And really the shift that we want to help you make is to think of yourself not just as a pastor and a leader of teenagers, but as a pastor and leader of other pastors and leaders who will pastor teenagers. So you need to really lead these volunteers who are serving alongside you well. So 7 ways to do that. Yep. Here's the first one.
We're going to go through these pretty quick. So take some notes if you want to, or just rewind this video if you have to. But here's the first one. All right. The first one are volunteer events.
Yes.
Now, Elle, talk to us. What are volunteer events?
Okay. So if you're in a church setting, then maybe this is a formal event that's maybe cool and produced and you speak and you do this whole thing, but it doesn't really need to be that. All that we're talking about when we say events is maybe once a year, get everyone from your team together and do some vision casting. Maybe that is you just kind of hanging out at your home and hosting a meal. Maybe it's going to a training event, like a conference or some kind of workshop together, whatever that looks like. The point is get all of your people together, cast some vision and make it a big moment for your whole team to train and just kind of get on the same page.
Yep. And we like to do this every fall. So kind of the kickoff to the school year, we do this volunteer training event and get everyone on the same page, making sure we all had the same idea of what the vision was and what the expectations were for our volunteers.
Right.
And then, so that was number 1. Number 2 are volunteer meetings. Now, we recommend doing volunteer meetings probably once every other month. Right. You don't want to overload your volunteer schedules. They've got a lot of stuff going on. You've got a lot of stuff going on, and you're expecting them to show up and volunteer in your ministry. So we like doing volunteer meetings every other month.
That's right. And when we say meetings, what we're really talking about here is 3 things: information, inspiration, and then connection. So you want to get all of your volunteers together and train them on a really specific subject, something that is really applicable to your ministry context. So really think about the things that your students are struggling with and that your volunteers might be struggling with as well, and give them some really practical hands-on training. If you don't feel equipped to lead those sessions, that's okay. But there are tons of people in your community who you can partner with to bring in and do some trainings for you and for your team.
Yeah, and I hope you caught that formula. We're talking about 1/3 information, 1/3 inspiration, and 1/3 connection.
That's right.
That's the formula for a good volunteer meeting. So if you can do that, and I always like to add, plus food.
Yes, all the
If
food.
you can do those three things plus food, you're going to have a killer volunteer meeting. All right. And number 3, we want to talk about volunteer discussion groups. Now, unlike meetings where maybe you're downloading a lot of information to your volunteers, discussion groups, you really want to have conversations between volunteers so they can help problem solve with each other.
Yeah, because really your volunteers are experts in their own right, just like you are. And they have a lot of information and knowledge to share. So what you can do with these discussion groups is get your volunteers in a room and then just pose some really good open-ended questions like, hey, what's going really well right now in your ministry? And let them share their wins, let them share their best ideas, their best strategies, what's not going well in your ministry right now, and then let them help each other troubleshoot. It is a really cool community building type of environment that is really important for your volunteers to get buy-in and to know that like, hey, we're all in this together and we can actually all help each other, which is awesome.
Yes. And the 4th thing we want to talk about are one-on-one conversations. So these are something that you can do with each individual volunteer that you have on your team if you can. If you have too many volunteers to be able to have one-on-one conversations with all of them, then you need to find other people to help you do this. But this is something that I would do at least once a week, put it in my schedule to have a one-on-one conversation outside of our normal ministry context. So that's like maybe going to coffee with them, going to breakfast with them, just finding a time outside of your ministry to have a personal one-on-one conversation.
Right, because your volunteers need to have relational connections with you, with each other, and this is a great environment to do that. It's also a great environment to give them feedback on what they're doing or maybe what they're not doing, and it's also a really good environment for you to invite feedback for yourself. Like, hey, how am I doing in my ministry and how can I improve? So yeah, one-on-one conversations.
All right. And the 5th thing that you should be giving your volunteers are volunteer tools.
Yes.
Now, you might be a learner. As a ministry leader, you're probably always trying to learn how to get better at your craft and what you do. And it's important that we give our volunteers tools so that they can become better at what they do.
Yes, share the knowledge, share the wealth. Maybe sometimes you need to actually create a tool that is specific to your team and what you need. For example, one simple thing that we did in our ministry was we made little volunteer business cards for all the volunteers on our team with their picture on it and just said like, hey, when you meet a student, just give them one of these. When you meet maybe a student's parent or guardian, give them one of these. This is a great way to kind of solidify that connection and relationship. So super simple, but really effective.
All right, we have 2 more left. Number 6 is communication. As a ministry leader, you need to communicate consistently and effectively. So find out where your volunteers like to hang out as far as social media. Do they use email? Do they use GroupMe or a Facebook group? What works best for your volunteers? Figure that out. And then the last thing we want to talk about today are how to celebrate your volunteers.
Yeah.
Elle, talk to us about celebrating volunteers.
I love celebration, so I'm happy to talk about this. Your volunteers need to feel appreciated and honored because ministry is really, really hard. I'm sure you figured that out. And just like you probably would love to feel celebrated by somebody once in a while, the other people on your team would as well. So think about ways that you can celebrate the people on your team weekly, monthly, and then every year. Maybe every week you just write one thank you card to somebody who you are serving alongside of and just pointing out something really amazing that they've done recently. And then maybe every month, just think of something fun that you can do to honor and celebrate the other people who you're serving with. One thing we like to do is we like to find weird holidays on the calendar, like, I don't know, like Unicorn Day or like Miniature Golf Day or Paper Airplane Day, and just figure out some ridiculous way to like celebrate our volunteers that way. Like Paper Airplane Day, write them a nice encouraging note and turn it into a paper airplane and then fly it at them. There you go.
There you go. Those are 7 ways that you can train your volunteers to create an environment that they love to serve at and create a ministry that they love to be a part of.
Yes.
Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.